I lead a fairly typical life. I work a menial job, go to the gym, and hang out with my girlfriend. But on the weekends, things look different. I've been playing poker for about 10 years now, and I've learned a lot. Like what it means when someone puts their hand on their face, and how to tell the difference between strength and weakness. But as I learn more, and I experience more success, I find myself wondering, how far could I go? See, I have this dream of taking all my money and going to Las Vegas to play the biggest poker tournament in the world, the World Series of Poker. Could I climb to the top? Could I change my life forever? I'm ready to find out. There's just one problem. I'd like to check my balance, please.
What's your current balance?
I am completely fucking broke.
Hide the money, y'all! There's poor people around!
Now, we don't need to go into the details of exactly how I ended up in this financial predicament.
They're called Trump digital trading cards.
Truthfully, it doesn't matter. What matters is, I'm tired of working a job I don't like. I'm tired of living my life according to other people's expectations. So yes, I'm going to Vegas. And yes, I might fail. I might fall flat on my face. But you know what? That's okay. Failure means I tried. Failure means I was willing to put myself out there. So this is my story. This is my journey. Going from broke bitch to poker legend. Maybe. So here we go, back at the poker room, trying to make enough money to make this poker dream a reality, buying in for 400 and sitting down at a 1-2 table. It looks like the poker gods are blessing my ambitions as early on I look down at the beautiful sight of pocket aces. With a $5 straddle and 2 limps, I decide to make it 25. Probably should have gone a little bit bigger as I get called by the cutoff, button, and small blind. So already over $100 in the pot as the 4 of us go to a flop that comes Queen Jack 8 with a flush draw. Not a great flop, especially considering the fact that hands like Queen Jack and 9-10 are so present in my opponent's ranges, so when the small blind checks to me, I like to go with a smaller bet size and bet 40. The cutoff folds, and that's when we get a massive tell on one of our opponents. Now, making live reads can be a bit intimidating as a beginner, but the good news is you don't need the detective skills of Walker Texas Ranger to pull it off.
Plane crashed here.
All you need is a little bit of observation and the knowledge of what to look for. In this hand, watch how much time passes between the cutoff folding and the button making the call. It's pretty much as soon as the cards are out of the way. With that information, we can basically eliminate 9-10 and Queen Jack from his range, as if you were going to slow play, I think you would at least consider a raise here, especially multi-way. To make matters even more simple, we get a similar read from the small blind who quickly calls. In fact, we can see him reach for calling chips almost immediately after I make a bet, which is not very strong. So with just a little bit of observation and hand reading, we basically know where our opponents are at. They probably have some sort of one pair type hand, maybe a straight draw, maybe a flush draw. So going to the turn, we're going to know exactly where we're at, so long as it's not a high card or a heart. The 4 of clubs definitely qualifies, so when the small blind checks to me, I feel confident going for another value bet. Here, I go with a size of 90, really trying to keep in those Jack X, Queen X, and weak draw type hands, considering they are in horrible shape. This time, the button calls, but the small blind folds, so the 2 of us are going heads up to a river with $400 in there, looking to avoid a heart or a high card. The 8 of diamonds is a very welcome sight, and with only about 150 behind, there's just one thing left to do.
All in.
My chips have barely touched the felt when we get the beautiful sight of my opponent tossing his chips into the middle in frustration and flipping his cards up in disgust. He shows King Queen of Hearts, exactly the type of hand I was hoping to target, and we get off to a very nice start. Paying attention to my opponent's physicality and timing was a huge help in that last hand, and it's not long before I get the chance to use it again. It starts when I look down at pocket 4s, raise to 10, and get 2 callers before we see a flop that comes, you guessed it, Queen 10-4. Now on these types of board textures multi-way, we don't want to be bashful, so when the small blind checks to me, I go for a near pot size bet of 25. Both Both players pretty quickly make the call, and I'm feeling good. I've got bottom set multi-way, the pot is growing in size, I'm even thinking about booking some classy entertainment while I'm in Vegas when the dealer peels off probably one of the worst cards in the deck, the 8 of spades, completing the flush and the straight. Action checks to me, and even though value betting a turn card this scary feels a little bit like this, I still think I can get value from worse hands, so this time I decide to bet 40. And once again, we get another key piece of information here as the player on the button snap calls, basically indicating he never has a flush and he never has a straight here. The player in the blinds gets out of the way, and once again we are heading off to a river, knowing pretty much exactly where we're at, hoping for a card that doesn't change the texture. The king of diamonds doesn't change much, and knowing that his range can't take a ton of pressure, I elect to go for a slightly smaller size of 55. He basically snap calls me, I flip my hand, and we are good. He later said something about having 2 pair here, so perhaps I should have gone a bit larger on the river. Either way though, happy to use that timing tell to turn what could be a tricky spot into an easy one. If you're interested in turning the tiny details at the table into profit, you should check out my new video, Live Tells Mastery. You see, in making this vlog, I've spent thousands of hours reviewing table footage. I've analyzed every micro movement, every shift in body language, all while having the benefit of knowing exactly which hand my opponent later revealed. And now I'm sharing all of that knowledge in one comprehensive video. So if using physical tells to take your poker game to the next level is something you're interested in, check out the link in the description below. For the next few hours, it feels like I can't miss. I'm getting good cards, making good hands, and building a nice stack. But like many great men, with great success comes great tribulation. It starts when I get pocket queens in a 3-bet pot and lose when the board comes king high. Next, I've got pocket jacks and lose again when the board comes ace high.
No! God, please, no! No! Oh, no, not the beast! Not the beast!
Even switching tables, a scientifically proven method to help your luck, doesn't work. And it all finally culminates with this. A 5-card PLO bomb pot where I flop top set on one board and a gutshot straight draw on the other board. 3 of us managed to get all in a massive pot, but I'm feeling pretty good as I river the nut full house on the bottom board. The first player shows pocket aces for the full house on the top board, so he and I are getting ready to chop up this huge pot when I notice the player in seat 1 fist bumping him.
What's going on here?
I'm not sure what's going on. I think I see a deuce, but surely he can't have that hand. Right?
Thought about killing myself.
All my profit for this session is gone. When things go this poorly at the table, I like to step away and gather my thoughts, so that's what I do. I step outside, do a little video journaling, and get a little bit of advice from my coach. But if I'm going to go to Las Vegas and see how I stack up against the best players in the world, I can't let one little speed bump bring me down, so I head back inside, buy some more chips, and sit down, ready to turn this ship around. It seems I'm going to get an opportunity to do that pretty quickly, as early on I'm dealt ace-king in the cutoff. With 2 players already in the pot for $8, I decide to bump it up to $35. Out of nowhere, the player on the button decides to call the re-raise for $35, as does the player on my right, so we are going 3 ways with a pretty sizable pot brewing. With only ace high, I'm looking for a bit of help when the dealer delivers a flop that lands like a suggestion from Siri. It's 8-8-4 with 2 diamonds. The player on my right checks, I check as well, before the button very quickly decides to bet 50. Now considering how quickly he decided to bet, I'm guessing he's going to be betting a little too frequently in the spot, perhaps with hands like ace-queen, ace-jack, ace-10, so I decide to peel one and see what develops on the turn. The 5 of hearts doesn't change much, so I check it over to my opponent, and that's when I notice something interesting. He's been shuffling his chips pretty consistently throughout the hand in a pretty unremarkable way, but as soon as this turn card hit, his right hand turned into fucking JoJo Siwa doing a dance move. This looks absolutely strong to me, so even though he checks it back, I'm pretty much done with the hand. Even when the 8 falls on the river, one of the few cards we might bluff on, as now the nuts have changed and I have all the good overpairs, but given our read, it's just too strong, so I check. He surprisingly checks it back, and I'm wondering if our live read was off until he flips over pocket 5s. So he turned to boat, but didn't feel strong enough to value bet the river. Still, pretty happy to see another live reconfirmed, even though it didn't come into play this hand. After this, a few orbits pass, I'm having trouble making any sort of hand, and I'm starting to wonder if I'm going to regain any of the momentum I had earlier. And that's when this hand happens. It starts when I look down at ace-queen in the small blind. 3 players have limped to me, so I make it 17, and only get called by the middle limper, one of the loosest players at the table. The two of us see a queen 10-3 flop, so I flop top pair, top kicker, and start things off with a bet of 15. And he instantly makes it 60. Now with top pair, top kicker, I can't go anywhere yet, so I make the call here, but I'm going to be proceeding a little bit carefully on the turn and river, depending on what develops. The dealer peels off an 8 of hearts, and this is one of those cards I'm going to be a little bit more cautious on, as I fully expect my opponent to have a hand like Jack 9 in his limp call range, and also potentially to raise that on the flop. So I decide to check here, and he snap checks back. Now I think his range is a bit less polarized and has more showdown oriented hands like 10x, queen x, maybe some pocket pairs. The 7 of diamonds on the river is probably a safe card to go ahead and value bet and try and get some value from those hands, but I'm not sure if they're going to call it big bet, so I decide on a size of 60. And my opponent decides to stuff it in my fucking face. Now obviously this guy's line doesn't make a ton of sense. It's hard to see him wanting to check a strong hand like 2 pair or a set on the turn, maybe Jack 9 sometimes, but overall he doesn't have a lot of strength here. But in these spots where someone's line doesn't make a ton of sense, I like to rely on what I call the Doc Brown theorem.
Oh my God, they found me. I don't know how, but they found me.
You see, Doc Brown has no idea how the Libyans found him, and it doesn't really matter. After all, the Libyans are just a plot device to force Marty McFly to travel back in time so the director, Robert Zemeckis, can indulge his weird Oedipal fantasies. In a poker context, I have no idea how this guy could possibly have good cards, but it doesn't really matter. People don't find nearly enough bluffs on the river, and even less so when they're facing an aggressive action like my bet here. So even though, yes, sometimes we will get bluffed here, unless I have a read that this player is capable of having a bluff in this spot, I'm going to make a fold and be fairly confident that it's going to make me more money than calling. So that's what I do, and as I'm folding, I decide to get a bit cheeky and show an ace of clubs here, hoping my opponent might be tempted to reveal his hand, and thankfully it works as he flips over the 6-7 of spades. I'm pretty much over this session, but they're still giving me cards. Pocket 9s, fuck it, I raise. This guy 3 bets, fuck it, I'm all in. Obviously he calls, obviously the flop is ace high, and obviously he has ace jack, and all of a sudden my dream of going to Vegas seems further than ever. Well, that's about as poorly as you could start a session in this series, unless I had been mugged in the parking lot. I was in for $800 in the cash games, out for 0. So obviously after a session like that, I experience a lot of questions like, what the hell is wrong with me? What was I thinking? Did I play these spots well? Did I play these spots horribly? The ace queen hand where I bet fold river, like I think that's a very fine fold versus the population. And then versus this guy who's just fucking blasting it off into the sun, it's actually like a tragedy. It's actually like Romeo and Juliet sipping poison. It's that level of sadness. But I'm not giving up. I have thousands of dollars left. Absolutely limitless bankroll. I'm gonna be fine. I'm gonna be fine. Fuck. Next time on Road to Vegas. It's been 2 weeks since I decided to chase my poker dream, and things are not going well.
I see.
But the biggest poker tournament of the year is happening this weekend in Portland, and if I make a deep run, it could change everything. Holy fuck. What the fuck is going on? I'm on the river with no clue what to do when all of a sudden my opponent says,
Flop.